Welcome to the ANZ Business Leader Boardroom series. In this 6th webisode of the series, FrontRunner Consulting's Doug Mathlin, together with some of the nation's elite business writers, will discuss their various succession strategies. Over the next 20 minutes, we will help you understand not only how important it is to have an exit strategy, but how to implement the right succession plan for you and your business. While retirement may not be on the cards anytime soon, it is important to always be thinking about your potential exit strategy. So let's get started. Download your workbook now. You'll find the link for your workbook under this video, and then follow along with this webisode as we guide you on how to build your own succession plan. There will be times throughout the course of the webisode where you'll be required to fill in your workbook, so make sure you pause the video and give yourself plenty of time to complete the tasks properly. If you do that, then at the end of this webisode, you should have all the tools you need to not only know which exit strategy will work for you, but how to implement it into your business. In addition, you'll also receive 2 CPD points, which we'll give you the code for at the end of this webisode. Throughout this webisode, you'll hear from a lot of different people with various insights. To get the most value, always be thinking about how the various information provided can apply to you and your business. Before you can implement the perfect exit strategy, you must first understand why it is important to have an exit plan in place.
What's your ideal exit strategy?
I'd like to have it continue on afterwards.
Good, so without you?
Yep, no, just without me.
Yep.
So whether that's, and so I see that in those two chunks. The chunk of business that was mine that I built, the chunk of business that this offsider or person has built up over the time that they were under my wing, and then everything from that point on, they'll maintain my stuff and they'll take it gradually, just start taking a clip of it. So instead of my trail disappearing altogether because another broker has bought it or another broker touches it, or they, God forbid, they go into a branch, this person will do the work, and the clients will continue to be looked after, and I'll just take a portion of that. So my trail will not disappear, it'll just wane off. But it'll take a lot longer for it to fall away if somebody else is maintaining that book.
Many years ago, I did start with the intent at 22 that I would retire at 30. I did that. That lasted 6 weeks. I don't know who in this room told me, "You'll be back, Kel." No, I won't, Tim. Yes, you will, Kelly. It's in your blood. No, I won't. And I was back 6 weeks later in a different state. Right? So I have gone through that process of generating a business from scratch, going through a partnership bust-up, carrying on as myself, employing staff, and then selling it. Because at the time, I didn't truly recognise the value of systems, and thought that the only way that the clients were actually going to be serviced was if I actually sold it to someone that was as caring as I was. Right? And so I didn't really have too much involvement even really to, even collecting the people that were potential buyers. There was kind of discussions by other people on golf courses. And then suddenly there were buyers there and a deal was struck and I was out. And that is a very emotionally traumatic experience if you're not fully ready for it. My goal is to, in 3 years' time, be working a lot less. I'd like to actually not work in the evenings in 3 years' time, so that's a big kind of goal for me. And that's really primarily driven around having more time with my family and being there for my daughter. But I don't know that I'd see myself, until I physically want to retire, leaving. I can't see, probably beyond 10 years. I think I'll still be doing it in 10 years' time, and maybe just still working, maybe leaving at 3 to 5 o'clock in the afternoon as opposed to much later.
I think it's fair to say that in recent years, legislation has forced us to put systems in place around us. And that's created now a saleable item to a certain extent. You're obviously there in the early days as I was in broking, and you went in there and all you were worried about was doing the deal to get some up front to pay the bills. And then over time it develops and you get your trail book, and that becomes saleable item. Then we need to have the contact with our customers, and then we've had the legislation come in that we've had to have systems to ensure that we've got those things. So now we've got this unit, this business, that to some extent has been forced on us.
We actually have the systems in place, and everybody that works in the franchise really works the same way. And some people see that as a not a good thing, whereas others see it as a benefit. But we actually have a retirement plan in place within the group. So as far as leaving is concerned, there are several options for us, I believe. One, we can sell it. It has to go back to the group and they've got to approve it. Or two, you might just sell part of your book or have someone else come in and run it for you. But there's also like a 7-year trail retirement plan if you just want to walk away. So there's a few options there, and that's one good thing about a franchise group that I've found. And when I went into it, I mean, that was one of the things that sort of drew me towards it, was there were options always there.
I've been operating for about 13 years now, and probably for about the last 8, we've been taking a strategy where we want to keep it as a family business long term. So we've brought one daughter into the business. We plan to bring a second who's currently at uni, and there's a possibility of a third daughter coming into the business also. So we're looking at a family business sort of approach. It's going to be there longer term. We're going to certainly have loan writers coming into the business given time. We're currently mentoring some young people in recent times, so that's going to be good for our business long term. So we've taken that strategy that we don't really see an exit as being something that we need to consider, that we can actually look at it long term as a family business.
As you can see, it is vital for you to have an exit strategy in place. Pause this video now and have a think about your potential exit strategy. How do you want to leave your business? Now that you have given thought as to why an exit strategy is important, it's time for you to start thinking about strategy specifics. Will you look to pass your business and brand onto a loved one, a family friend, or a colleague? Perhaps you are thinking about leaving the business altogether.
If you just got mortgages, you've only got one product. I think it's important that you cross all aspects of that. So you've got the client all in one, so you've not only got their home loan, you've got the cars if they're in business, you do the financial planning. So I have a financial planning business as well. And so we're doing all the risk insurance, the life insurance, so you're doing the mortgages, you've got them for a lifetime. So when you're seeing there and someone comes and buys your book, they're looking at it and they're going, well, it's just not a mortgage loan where you can go back to the bank or they go and shop it around or whatever they may be. We're doing everything. So it's harder for the client to leave, and therefore your drop-off rate is non-existent, especially if you service those clients. So that's purely what I look at, is to have a fully financial integrated business. That's everything.
We started off as mortgage brokers about 12 years ago when we first came into the industry, but I then purchased as an extra income stream a motel. From that motel we developed a motel broker, and a lot of our income now comes from not just selling motels, but from, we then started to list for other companies warehouses for sale. So we sell small businesses like warehouses, like coffee shops, but we also do the finance for those as well. So whilst there's a separate team of people within our company that does that, they then refer the finance back to the people who does it. So we have a financial planner and one accountant, so whilst it's not totally incestuous, but there's a good opportunity to be able to write the loans for the people selling the business and whatever. And I found that having a diversified business means that if I then want to opt out by, say, working 3 days a week or 2 days a week, each of those have their own structure. I can carve them off. They're all sellable, even though they're linked and they're owned by the same people. They can be carved off individually, and they all have value in their own right. And all their accounting is done individually. So I think that you can diversify and have a complex structure. As long as there's a way of separating out each aspect of your business, you can sell it as a lump sum, as a lump entity, or you can divide it up into 5 or 6 segments. And quite often you can find a buyer who will want to buy the lot, depending how big it is, or someone who will want to buy a segment. and whether that be a staff buyout in part or whether it be another company that wants to diversify. I've always felt that, particularly after the global financial crisis, that scared me because I thought I'm not going to be reliant upon any one industry or any one market niche. I'm going to be looking at a whole range, and I target also our client base.
You don't sell in a bad market at the moment. You're probably looking at 1.5 times. Probably in a good market, 2.5 times would be the saleable equation. I suppose selling a trail book in good times too, there's less likely chance of delinquent files in your client base. At the moment, I think everybody has those because things are still fairly tough. So obviously the timing of when you do sell your trail book is important. I think you just need to look at a time when your business is actually still moving forward and there's all positive signs coming out of your trail book. So I think that's important.
So let's just talk about selling the business. Let's assume something happened and you had to sell the business, okay, for whatever reason. Unforeseen circumstances, you've got to put it up for sale. Hope this doesn't happen in a hurry. Hope you can do this over a bit of time. But just to help me here, what are we selling if we were selling the business?
Trail book, contact base, systems,
Data.
and sometimes, not that we're trading people, but the people that work within our organisation.
The other option you could look at is that some of the banks are actually becoming a little bit more, how could I put it, accustomed to the idea of maybe financing. And if you are looking at a short-term urgent need for funds, that's one avenue you could look at.
If you can do something for your kids, it's important. So you've got something you can leave to them. And my daughter turned out to be an environmental scientist, not interested at all. But my son was interested, so he's learning the ropes and doing his diploma even as we speak. Ideally, in my situation, or bringing the family into it, they can run with it and you can come and help them a bit when they're on holiday or do whatever. And I see that I'll be paid for my half of the business until I go into my wooden box. So that's my plan.
Definitely.
I've explored or progressed thoughts around the process of how legal practices go where they sell part of the business but they retain themselves as a consultant and receive a consultant's fee each year as basically a knowledge information source that you were talking about for people to go back to. That's you're in turn really getting employed on a nominal fee per year, and you'll get a little bit more as they need your expertise to help them out. That's you sell a business to someone, they take it over, but you retain and stay as a consultant to that business. In a lot of cases in the legal profession, they actually advertise your name to keep the people coming back there because of your knowledge and expertise in the business.
When it comes to developing your own exit strategy, there is no right and wrong. Different businesses will need and want different exit strategies. Pause this video now and think about which exit strategy will work best for you in your business. Now that you have time to consider which succession strategy you would prefer to embrace in your business, it's time to weigh up the pros and cons associated with this strategy and put some specifics behind the strategy you have chosen. If you want to pass the business on to a loved one, who will you pass it on to? Do you have a son or a daughter capable of running the business? Or perhaps you have a colleague that would be the ideal manager.
In terms of selling the business, what are the obvious pros versus the cons of selling your business?
You're completely out. No responsibility.
Yep.
You're finished.
Cut and dried. Cashed in.
Yep.
Cashed
You
out.
have your money.
Yep. What about what's the downside?
Changing your mind.
I think that's a
Can't be
big
undone.
one. Yeah, you can't go back. You're not supposed to.
Empty feeling.
Yeah.
You've got to do something else with the money. You've got to find a decent return for your money, which has been hard to find over the last 18 years.
Yep.
So that's where I'm probably more reliant to keep the business going and bring a manager in, because I've been getting a far better return from the business than I have from the shares and the tips and the superannuation and the property.
You look at the three industries that have got the similar sort of setup, I guess, is your real estate agents have got their rent roll, your financial planners have got their their insurance, etc., and the rest of their trail coming through, and we've got our trail coming through. And look at what's happened in real estate in the last, well, since 2009. A lot of the smaller operators that had no rent roll or a very small rent roll either didn't make it through, or are just coming through on the skin of their knees. Whereas the ones that have had big rent rolls and that regular cash flow coming through, irrespective of what's happening in the market, they've continued to flourish. And that's the same with planning, and it's the same with mortgage broking, I suppose. So having that asset and being attached to that asset for longer is probably more going to be the key than necessarily being in there working it.
What about outsourcing the book? What are the pros and cons there? We just talked about some of the pros. Is there any? Can anyone think of any of the downside? There's always going to be cons with any strategy we take.
That's just that. That's going to be that competency that came up before.
Getting the wrong person.
That continuity. Having the wrong person. Having the particularly if there's ownership involved.
Another potential exit strategy. No one's mentioned this one yet, but merging with another business.
Merging with another broker gave us, and not just me, obviously the other parties to it as well, the ability to have holidays, time off, all of the things I guess that you really do struggle with when you're operating on your own.
Sure.
As for the income side of things, the agreement we've made is that we don't dip into income. Our income is our income. We actually run the business as a cost, not as a profit. So it's not a profit centre, it's a cost centre. We review the expenses, the operating expenses quarterly, and on a quarterly basis we agree that this is the new monthly figure and it must be in the bank by the first of the month, and we operate straight out of an expense. So that way there is no, I did more work than you this month, and we're pulling out the same salaries. There's no arguments about cash flow. There's no arguments about about who's doing more. Or they could be working 80 hours a week for all I care. If I keep doing the work that I do, and I keep being remunerated for the work that I do in the same way that I always was, because we're not taking any money out of each other's pockets.
Yep.
All we have to agree on is what are the operating overheads going to be.
But kind of a partnership is, if there's some relationship breakdown, like you've got more risk in some regard, because if you've got 4 partners, there's 4 partners that also have husbands or wives. If there's some relationship breakdown, of course you'd cover that in your buy-sell agreement, but it can be very destructive to a business if there's a marital breakdown somewhere in that, because the remaining person might have to pay out, or that person might have to pay out a big chunk of their share of the business worth in a matrimonial dispute. They might not have the funds.
If you merge 2 businesses together, obviously it's going to be a bigger business, especially if you've got a branding. You're going to, instead of 6 staff, you're going to have 12, in your team, and it's bigger, and then obviously it's going to be you'll be able to help each other, and I can see that. But you can still build. I think if you've got more brokers, you're taking a clip of each one of those brokers. If you've got 6 brokers, you're getting 10-20%.
What are the pros and cons of doing nothing in part of your exit plan?
Well, I suppose if you put your energies into something else, we've started doing income there, then winding the book down isn't such a bad thing, because you just continue to get income while you start to go out and earn more income.
Sure.
So that's probably fine if you did that.
You can chop out your bottom line straight away, can't you? So you say I'm going to do nothing, shut down all your phones, everything, and just so your bottom line's gone, and then at the beginning you earn more money to start with until the trail drops off.
Because all your expenses are gone.
No
evaporated.
expenses.
Staff plan. I know a couple of you are talking about this. You're thinking about this as well, whether it's children or staff. Those are doing it. Why this succession plan? Why the son taking over?
It's always a dream to do something for your kids, isn't it? So, my parents didn't do. They did a great job, but you'd like to do more for your own children.
Sure.
So it's literally a natural progression for me, because he was interested. I made him go and get a couple of jobs first, so he didn't come straight from school. So because that's not a good thing to come straight in and working with Dad, it's easy. So we did that, and like I said, I can see the benefit of still retaining half the business. He can have half, and myself and my wife had half, and that'll keep our income going on for a long, long time. So it just made sense to me.
Is there any cons for that?
Because you have to teach them to do things your way, and we argue a little bit, I guess, which is a downside. He's sort of, oh, I'm working for my dad, I can't get fired, sort of thing. Whereas I've actually fired him once before. That's a good story. He came in one day, and this is when he was helping at school, and he had his feet on the desk, his music in, and so I fired him. And we always used to give him $50 a week pocket money. And when he was working back at school days, he's on 100. So he's on the phone and he said, "There's no money in my bank, Dad." And I said, "Well, that's because you don't work for me anymore. Do you remember, like, I fired you?" "What the hell?" Like, so it's like, so, and he couldn't quite grasp that when he was working, he just assumed it was going to keep coming. So I said, "No, do you remember we had that row and you fired you?" So he's worked for me. I fired him once or twice. And now I think we're getting on okay. So that's
we've all got insurance cover. Everybody has that in their business, but yeah, like it's an issue if something did happen to you. Obviously, in my case, my daughter could write some loans, but the business would have to find another person to run the business.
Yeah. Like so, if the business is only one person and no one else is qualified to do it, it's finished, right? You've got a trial book and that's what you're selling, right? But if your business is a little bit bigger and you have other people that are other mortgage brokers or that pick up the slack or whatever.
Or if there's staff.
But see, I still maintain if you can't replace yourself in a day, you haven't got a business. You really haven't got a business.
Yeah.
And it's irresponsible not to think along those lines.
Yes.
Because you should be able to just take yourself out like that.
Yeah.
And know that things go on and still make you money.
As you can see, there are plenty of positives and negatives associated with whatever succession plan you choose. Take this time to write down the pros and cons associated with your chosen succession plan. For example, if your exit strategy involves selling the business, are you happy to forgo your trail? Have a think about it. Now that you've identified the positives and negatives associated with your specific succession plan, it's time to start building your succession plan, making sure to incorporate as many of the positives as possible.
It's one thing to develop a plan to initiate succession, but at some stage each individual has to think about what comes next in their own life. And part of the issue is, and I've seen it happen with many older clients in Western Australia, they planned, and I was talking to Mark about it earlier, they planned to do a whole range of things like go around Australia, which is common, Winnebago sort of deal, go overseas, work in the garden. But most of us haven't got, beyond work, any particular hobby that takes up all time or is consuming. So most of us do those things in the first 6 months and then haven't really put thought into that transition from the workplace. And I think it behoves everybody when they're looking to replace themselves to think about, well, depending on their life expectancy, what might happen, say, over the next 10 or 20 years? What are they going to do that's meaningful? And meaning comes in many different formats. But you need to be able to, I think, put a bit of work in with somebody independent of your business to say, well, to really confront you with the hard issues and say, okay, once you've gone overseas, once you've found someone to take your place, what are you really going to be doing with your time? How many years are you going to live for? And how is that going to become some evolution of your individuality into something that's going to... Otherwise, you're going to become very bitter about, oh, God, I've made the wrong decision, or I've made this big change, and now what? And you see it in people who have sold businesses and then suddenly come back into the workforce after 2 years, quite disillusioned, thinking, oh, that was quite a failure, you know?
I guess creating that segue from your clients, because most of the guys here are one-man bands, into that next person. And that's one of the problems that I have. You talk about having someone coming in to take over and do the work. And a lot of the clients will say, but we want to deal with you, you know, and we expect our kids to deal with you. And it's creating that segue to get them over to somebody new, because you don't want to be there.
We started 5 years ago. I went into, it's not really, I mean, it's a partnership because we own the name and all that sort of stuff, and we've got companies and so on. But it's more of a joint venture style arrangement. But it's afforded me the ability to take about 6 to 8 weeks off a year where I've got no phone, no email, because my phone gets diverted to the office or gets diverted to somebody else. Somebody else is looking after my clients, and it's a caretaking function. It's not a I'm out, you know, go and do it. It's if you can get your clients used to the idea that it's not the end of the world if I don't answer the phone. There's the office during business hours, and if I'm away on holidays, which I actually do now, I go away and I go overseas and I'll divert my phone to my business partner and he fields the calls. And they get used to the idea that it's nothing's going to stop if I'm not around, and that's that mental leap that you need to get the older clients used to, is that I am not going to be available, but if I am away, somebody else is looking at it. And that's just part of your marketing material, it's part of your contact regime. It's, you know, we've got a part-time girl that has done nothing for the last 3 years, then call every single one of our clients every 6 months. So she gets used to hearing from, clients get used to hearing from somebody else. It's not always me. They know they've got another point of contact. They get emails from the office. There's, you know, it is a gradual process.
Well, I think most people have got long-term goals, but they've got to be reviewed regularly.
Yep.
I think before the GFC came in, most of us had a pretty rosy long-term goal sitting there, and then within 6 months it reversed. That's so. Whilst you've got your long-term goal there, but you're constantly reviewing where you're going to be to get to that long-term goal, and that's what you're talking about, your yearly goals or your present day goals coming in there. But there's a lot of outside influences that can come along and affect that long-term goal. And in a lot of cases that's been work longer for a lot of the clients that you have that were ready to retire and didn't position themselves correctly. And the end result is work longer. And I guess I probably would have liked to have been stepping out this year as well, but not going to happen.
What will we do if you
I've started my foundation in place now, ready for retirement, but I wanted to get the costs of my retirement, I guess, dealt with while I still had a cash flow to be able to deal with it.
Just to retire, you're not just going to do nothing. So someone once said to me, if you took a group of guys, whether you'd be good at this, if you put you into a different field, you'd be good at that as well, because it's just the way you are. So to retire and do completely nothing is not an option. We just have to do. I think it's the choice of not working, as opposed to give you the choice whether you want to do it or not. Then you can just go and potter around with something else.
Well, I'm going to turn some hobbies into maybe a paid role, because I do a lot with junior sports, so I'd love to be more involved with that. Maybe I could get paid to do it instead of as a volunteer.
Think about the various logistics associated with your proposed exit strategy. How will your plan affect your business, your colleagues and your family? How will the plan work and when will it take effect? What year are you planning to leave the business? And what do you want to achieve before then? Pause this video now and think about your succession plan. Create a timeline for your plan and work backwards from there. Identify when you want to leave the industry and what you want to achieve before then. Now that you've drawn up your succession plan, the last but most important step is obviously implementation.
One thing I will do is formalise a lot of our informal discussion about it and formalise it into an agreement now. So it becomes more binding and more clearly understood by both parties. So to me that would be the only flaw in my plan so far that I can see. But I think it needs to be possibly, and there's been some ideas around the room that I'd expand upon. So,
as you can see, it is vital that you not only develop a plan, but flag it with everyone involved in the business. Make sure you canvass the reactions of your colleagues and your loved ones to ensure that this is the right plan for you. Pause this video now and think about who you would like to run your succession strategy past once complete. Once you have done that, let everyone know what the plan is, and you can all start working towards it. Good luck.